Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. Welcome to the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks, which all this week we've turned into the Mind of an Entrepreneur series on business warfare. And today we're going to be talking about leadership. Okay. And we're going to really break down the difference between management and leadership. All right. Okay. So peace and blessings again. Be a friend, tell a friend, and I'll be right back after these few short announcements.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Welcome to the Sajdah channel. And welcome to cold Chicago. I'm sorry for coming on here all bundled up. I had to get dressed because I got to head out right after we finish our chat this morning, but I'm already layered up because it's cold here. So y'all know how I do it. I love being diverse. So some days you're gonna see me in my grubbies layered up. Other days you're gonna see me flowing and sparkling. That's how it go, right? I'm so grateful to be at a point in my life and in my career where I can present how my presentation can match how I'm feeling. Right now I'm feeling like I need to be warm. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for continuing along with the series on business warfare. Today, my presentation on leadership is going to sort of extend from the series of conversations we've been having on leadership. And I want you guys to feel open to put anything in the chat. I see y'all pop it in the chat and I will get to that. Let me show you something. Years ago, I'm going to shine this up a little bit. My staff gave me this plaque to go on my desk and it says chess, not checkers, because I would always be saying that to them. This is chess, not checkers. And in this is one of the biggest lessons that I learned in the development and ownership of the hospital was strategy and the difference between leadership and management. And understanding how powerful strategy really is. I had come out of the consulting world. And for those of you who don't know it, because I know the word consulting gets thrown around a lot, and I always have to break this down for people. I started out in public accounting, and in public accounting, there was in the public accounting firms, there was the audit side, and then there was the consulting side. And the consulting side was all but off limits to people who were not in the old boys club. And I didn't necessarily care for being in audit because, audit's long hours, especially this time of the year. But the beautiful thing about being in audit, and one of the reasons why I went into it, was so that I could really learn entrepreneurship from an internal and tactical side. And then once I got an opportunity to go back into that world as a consultant, because by this time there had been some regulatory stuff that happened that broke up the marriage between auditing and consulting. And so I was able to get in. And I was really honored and grateful to be able to get in because I was able to really, really learn the backside of business. I was able to sit at the table and really see from a management side, a tactical side, a leadership side, what some of the conversations were, how things actually worked, not being a manager. Because what happens to a lot of us, especially those of us as Black people, we're allowed to be managers. We're allowed to be, leaders on a management side. But as a developer and building a hospital, built a $20 million facility, sitting at the table where those types of conversations happen, where there weren't a lot of women, rarely if ever did I see women. I saw women more on the management and quote, I say leadership in air quotes, leadership side, executive, managing processes, over processes, directors. But I didn't see a lot of women, especially not a lot of Black women on the development side. And it's on that side where you get to see the intention of things. And so when I come back and say, I'm going to give you all game because I earned this experience with my blood, sweat, and tears. And it's something that can't nobody take away from me. Um, it's an experience that I've been very, very blessed to have over the years. And I'm so grateful to Allah for honoring my request to go into this field. And when I say that, I'm grateful, but let me say something. I've been around long enough to learn that oftentimes we think that we have a request or we have a desire and that it's independent in our own mind, something we came up with. But what I'm learning is that a lot of times that's the divine intervention and the divine inspiration, because I might think that I came up with an idea, but it's really all along, God going, no, I got a plan for you. So I'm grateful, I'll say it this way, for his intervention in what I thought was my affairs. All right. Let me talk a little bit about people. And this sparked me yesterday because I was at the Mojo Museum fundraiser. They had a holiday soiree, which was really, really nice. Congratulations to Chandra and the team. Really, really beautifully put together. I think what was most beautiful about it was the energy in the room. Y'all know I'm all about the vibration. So as soon as I walk in someplace, I'm feeling the vibration. I'm feeling the people, and the vibration was really good. And most times when I'm going to tell this story, my grandmother's going to probably be like, what? No, she ain't telling my business, but I got to tell it. So, as a little girl, sometimes, and you have a grandmother, and grandmothers, when they get older, a lot of times they lose their filter. So the little granddaughters oftentimes get access to information that maybe the direct children don't necessarily get it because they're in a different mode. But we used to talk about artists and music all the time. We talk about Al Green. We talked about B.B. King. We talked about Muddy Waters. And I don't know why I always thought that Muddy was from Louisiana, but I think it's because of how my grandmother talked about him. And there's a few songs that, and it's interesting because the songs that were played last night, 3 of them are like the top 3 songs that she would play. And it's a riff. It's a riff between the guitar and the bass and the drum beat that reminds me of her and the little steps she would do as she had her little sip of gin. And so she would just talk, about how she felt about artists, and she she loved Muddy and BB. And she told me, she said that when she was young, she went to a juke joint in Louisiana and threw her panties on the stage. I'm sorry. I couldn't help but think about that. But anyway, so we laughed, and we would laugh about that all the time. And I would just tease her about that. But this is what I was really, I was also thinking about her and her love, and how, we draw things to ourselves. And Chandra has certainly become a sister and a friend to me. We are co-founders of the Coalition of Black House Museum. And building these museums and working to preserve this great history in this great city of Chicago. But I just thought, how funny is it that I would sit on the floor and listen to my grandmother talk about Muddy Waters, and then I end up, helping with developing and preserving some of his history. Life is really interesting. Then I started thinking about Chandra's got a documentary coming out. And we never even talked about it, but I was in Georgia last week working on the documentary that we're doing for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. And I was thinking about the Great Migration and the sharecroppers when she showed the video, and she even spoke a little bit about the Great Migration. And I had an opportunity to do a little bit of place-based education when I went down there a couple of weeks ago. Um, you all by now know that I'm an empath. And so being there on the land with the information, I was really able to feel um, what it felt like. Being in that space as a sharecropper, and I can call it now, I really could feel them. I could feel the pain in their bodies. I could feel the determination in their minds, in their brains. And I could feel them wanting and desiring a new life for themselves. And the hardness of their determination came through really strongly when I was there walking through grave sites and at some of the churches where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's father and grandfather preached, and going past the school site, going past the site where he saw a lynching. And when I saw, Muddy on the screen, and every time I see him, he comes through for me a little bit. Um, and I and that same energy of determination and focus and hope as they got here to Chicago and to Detroit, in the case of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and later Chicago, um, I, I could, it's palpable. I could almost taste it. And I started to really think about leadership and leading into this conversation that I wanted to have, or this talk I wanted to have today. And there's some commonalities that you see in a lot of their stories. The kindness and the desire to help people. These houses where people stayed and came and met, and all this history was created, is really a form of leadership. We're going to talk about some of the traits of a leader. I think I put this in the chat. I think here we go. The anatomy of a leader, the anatomy of leadership. And what was coming through for me is intelligence. Even though in many cases they will tell you, I went to the 3rd grade, the 4th grade, but they had the courage to navigate their way from whatever small town they were in to the big city, get on the train and head up north. We actually walked down the colored only tunnel where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would have boarded the train to head to Detroit. And there was some kind of energy in that space and in that tunnel. And to be honest with you, I was really only able to get halfway down the tunnel because it got really overwhelming. And I didn't want to, I'm known for having a Harriet Tubman moment. I didn't want to fall out on the floor. So I turned around. But even just watching and traveling the distance between some of these small towns to get to the bigger town where the train station was. And you ask yourself, if this took us an hour by car or 2 hours by car, how long did it take them walking on a donkey or on a stagecoach? See, we watch a lot of these Western movies and you see people traveling with coaches. That was us. We were running from the terrorism of the South. And so when they got up here up north and they took different paths, those leadership traits, you will see a consistency, the intelligence, the credibility, very credible men and women, the humaneness, and they wanted for their brother or sister what they wanted for themselves. The courage not only to think for themselves, do for self, and to make it up here, but the courage to help other people. The courage to not be shady, but to say, I know I might get backlash by helping this person, but I'm going to help my family. I'm going to let them come here and give them some place to stay. And in many, many cases, they were open, courageously open to befriend a lot of different people. There was discipline there, the discipline to stay focused. And if you look at a lot of these homes, there was always people in and out, always in and out. When you look at the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, there's more civil rights leaders that have been in and out of that house, meeting, dining, having conversations. So many people, thousands of leaders, incredible conversations. That takes a certain kind of hospitality to do that. And the same thing was mentioned about Muddy. And I've heard the same thing about other iconic leaders that have come through that generation, through that great migration, and laid the foundation so we could be here today. So this is why history is so important. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that history is the best at qualifying its student. Why? Because you get to learn patterns. And if you have trained your brain like I have for being many years as a consultant, you're trying to figure out how to pluck out the themes and leadership, the intelligence, the credibility, the humaneness, the courage, the discipline. There's a song that Muddy sings where he says, "I'm a man." And and there's some sexy content around it, some cute, playful content around it. But to make a statement like that, to say I'm a man, and to drop that kind of statement out there in the vernacular takes political courage. You know why? Because back then, Black men were not seen as men. They were seen as boys. And so in whatever context you're stating it, if you're dropping into a vernacular or into a culture, the concept that I'm a man, no matter what you're talking about, it takes a lot of courage. Because you could be beaten, blackballed, and slaved just for saying that. It's no different than today. Those of us that really advocate for Blackness, for Black culture, for the preservation of our culture, for the upliftment of our people, it takes a lot of courage, because the public PR is that we don't use that language. So we've been negotiated into saying minority, African American, some of that kind of stuff. But the Black concept and Blackness, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, unites us with all people of our hue around the world. And it unites our stories. So you may not be able to see the commonalities between someone like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and a Muddy Waters or an Ida B. Wells. You might not be able to see it because you're looking at it through the lens of the public PR that has been put together posthumous or after their departures. So there's a PR campaign. And then that PR campaign divides us and silos us. Why? Because we are not practicing the principles of leadership that they practiced. Why is that important? Because those principles got them up out of the terrorism in the South. Now, when they got north, it was a whole nother form of abuse that they were dealing with. But to just navigate through that like refugees. See, this migration has not been studied, and we don't really understand the migration process that took place. We see these Western movies, people traveling in stagecoach, but we were the ones with the horses and the buggies getting from Cordell, Georgia to Macon, Georgia, so we can get on the train. How did they get there? Many of them damn near walked and died to get up north to just have a glimpse of a better life. And running from this massive amount of terrorism that was impacting their everyday lives, lynchings left and right. So I'm saying that to say that let's focus when we are moving together on projects and history on what we have in common and not on the PR campaign that's been written about each and every one of us. And I'm talking about our leaders that then create these silos that we all line up behind like this is the truth. The real truth is the strength, the courage, the intelligence, the credibility, what it took for them to get from where they were to where we are now, because we're an embodiment of them. I was looking for something that I had up here. I don't think I put it up here. I have the obituary of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King here. And I was a person who studied Dr. King quite a bit. I got a couple scholarships from essays and things that I had written about Dr. King. My mom used to buy me tapes and these big albums with Dr. King's speeches on it. And so I studied it a lot. And I always wondered how we got from what I picked up and connected to as Dr. King to who we have today, this I have a dream person, or this person that's been reduced to this I have a dream. And when I read his obituary, which I just got a couple of years ago, I saw the PR campaign being written and designed so that we would line up in a certain way. And then they tell us, okay, now we got the narratives. Who you with? Martin, Malcolm, Prince, Michael Jackson, right? Usher, Chris Brown, always making us line up instead of focusing us on what we have in common that has gotten us as a collective to where we are today. All right. I see y'all popping in the chat. Please give me some feedback on this. I want to make sure that we're getting this. So that's important. Here's the other thing. We covered this yesterday. As a conscious entrepreneur and a conscious leader, you will understand how to respect somebody else's story. So my story and who I am and how I've evolved, right, in my divinity is my story, and yours is yours. That doesn't make either of us necessarily right or wrong, because we're all in submission to the will of God, whether we want to be or not. There's a power outside of us that's orchestrating things. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. So respecting people's story. I've gotten a few consulting projects over the years where major companies are trying to figure out how to connect with their workforce. So if you take a company like a Home Depot or somebody like that, Home Depot hires returning citizens, and there's certain demographics. And so as a leadership team, they needed to know, how do we connect? How do we connect to that brother or sister that's working in the kitchen? See, you can be arrogant and up in your white tower if you want to, but if you can't connect with the boots on the ground, then it's going to impact your business. What's going to happen is if you don't connect with the boots on the ground and you don't figure out where the commonalities and leadership are, you're going to continue to build structures and processes and systems, and your company's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're going to keep layering on top of layer management, oversight, quality control. You're going to just keep layering, and then you're going to have this big mammoth organization where you're wasting so much money, and then you're disconnected with the real workers, and now you're going to be paying the price of those workers being disengaged. All right, now let's get into this part. Management versus leadership. Okay, management versus leadership. A lot of us think we're leaders, but we're really just managers. And part of the challenge that you face as an entrepreneur is that if you don't learn how to make that transition or bridge that gap or learn the skills that get you on one side or the other, you're going to have a hard time creating and manifesting in your business. What do I mean by that? Let's break down the definition. Management is the process of planning and control. So as a manager, you are planning and controlling a system that is being created, whether somebody creates a system for you, whether you get it out of a book, whether you just say, hey, this is what I've seen before, and I'm going to follow this process. Most of us with a trained eye, we can look right at your business, and this is just a trained eye from being a consultant. We can look right at your business style and see what model you are following. Because what the business world does is there are certain models that are just out there, and a lot of times people pick up on them. And so what we see oftentimes is somebody who picks a model and then they really are just a manager and they just walk through the process. They're managing a process. And so everything they do is stuff that they've seen somebody else do. There's nothing that comes from here. There's no internal creativity. There's no divine inspiration or revelation. Hint to the wise. People always say, ooh, how you get good skin? It's divine revelation. See, because when you allow the spirit of a force outside of yourself that is bigger than you to flow through you, and you allow yourself to be a conduit, your skin is going to vibrate in a certain way. Everything about you is going to vibrate differently because you're doing something that is divine. And now you bring in a whole host of support that you may not have access to had you not decided to step out and lean on that divine inspiration. So some people have management style business models. And so in their management style, they're canvassing other people so that they can find ideas that they can implement into their business. And there's enough out here that you can be like that. The challenge with that, though, is you have to make sure that you don't treat your people in accordance with what you see as well. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. What is leadership? Leadership is the process of people working to achieve something together. It's a little bit of a nuance, a little bit of a twist. So if you came up north and came to Chicago and stayed with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Mother Clara, and they helped you out, there's so many, listen, hundreds of people I've spoken to that have talked about how much they helped them, whether it was helping to pay a mortgage, help them to move, get up north, you name it. And I heard the same theme last night with Muddy Waters, and I've heard it in so many other instances. And when I went there and just got a chance to walk the land, that had a really interesting energy to it. You could feel the past violence. I understood why they were so adamant about helping people and saving people and being very hospitable. One thing you'll find with many of them is a kindness and a hospitality. Feeding people food at the dinner table. I was, when I was sitting there last night, the empathic energy was coming through was kindness and service and feeding people, not just food, but feeding people opportunity, wisdom. See, that's the kind of stuff that's going to make you be intergenerationally wealthy. That's why we're in the room last night with this man who came up from being a sharecropper up from Mississippi, and we're sitting in the room. Why? Because of those leadership traits, that level of feeding people. And that's what was coming through. Even as they were passing around a lot of the hors d'oeuvres, food, feeding people. And every time I looked up at the screen and looked at his face, the energy of feed, 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 food, kindness, opportunity, love, even just filling up people's bellies. So when you think about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, you know how much history was made at the dinner table? Think about that. Think about going to 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue and sitting at the table, and there's Muhammad Ali and Senator Adam Clayton Powell, Wilma Rudolph, and who knows who else would have been sitting there, Mother Clara, and a whole host of other people that we may not even know. The feeding, the food, giving people access to opportunities. What happens to us today is that we have lost our leadership abilities because we don't feed people game. We don't feed opportunity. We're too busy trying to follow this business model where we want what they got. We want to copy what they have. We want to take what somebody else has, and we're competing. And even if they did compete, that didn't impede their ability to put somebody else in front of checks, in front of opportunities, in front of food, in front of a place to stay, in front of teaching them, whether it was music or the guitar or civil rights or helping people out. You have the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who had a certain PR around him of negativity because these white people at that time did not know what to do with him, and he was bringing some truth to people and changing people's minds. But here he is, the 1968 Georgia Democratic delegation. Didn't have any money, didn't have a hotel, didn't have security, didn't have transportation. He financed that, made sure they got to the convention, gave some of them a place to stay. We have the picture with Andrew Young and all of them standing there right there in the living room of 4847 South Woodlawn. What were the conversations? And in his mind, it's an interesting thing. There's an article in the Chicago Tribune, and shout out to the Chicago Tribune because they just did an interesting article on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You all can Google it and see it. It came out December 1st. Very, very interesting. And I thought that considering the amount of negative PR that they tend to put out around the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I thought the Tribune did a great job with not being as biased as you see that. So check that article out. But there's another article when you Google Elijah Muhammad Chicago Tribune, came out in 96, where it talks about the Democratic Convention and them coming to Chicago and being at the table, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad jokingly asking people around the table, like, should we help them? And the sister was like, they just gonna take the money and give it to the white man. And some of the brothers was like, well, and the messengers made a joke like, we're not listening to them. We're gonna go ahead and help. But there are countless stories like that. Leadership, the process of people working to achieve something together. So what were they looking to achieve? What level of freedom and escape from the terrorism of the South and the injustices up north that they all had begun to face? What was that? How did that commonality force them to do for self and do for each other and to unite? And you can see those commonalities when you really study. I'm huge on studying these people, and any of our leaders that have met a certain doom lost that way of being. When jealousy crept in, when slackness, weakness, gossip crept in, and they lost their ability to focus on what the common goal was, that's when they're able to pluck us off. And so one by one, they start plucking off our leaders by igniting jealousy in one another, competition in one another. Instead of us wanting for our brother and sister what we want for ourselves, we're competing. We don't like each other. We can't sleep at night because we're trying to figure out how to be a step ahead of this person. Instead of us working together and encouraging that person to live their life and their story, we're really setting ourselves up so that we fall right into the divide and conquer that has disconnected us from the great legacies that we're celebrating with these house museums. There's a disconnect. Why? Because they taught us to be competitors, taught us to walk away from each other, taught us to hate on each other. Why? Because all we're doing is mimicking a system that's out there. We're mimicking what we see. We talked yesterday about rivals in business, and we don't even know that on a subconscious level, we're mimicking that. Well, see, I'm all about defying that and uniting and supporting. We're going to get a lot further. Let me tell you something. Had there not been cooperative economics, had there not been unity, had there not been a connection and love, those people would never have made it across the South and up north. Never. I want to talk a little bit too about creativity and leadership. Let me get to the chat because I see some of y'all before I talk about this. Let's see. I see you, Sister Betty. Happy Friday, sis. Brother Lamont is in the house. Good morning and walaikum salam, sir. Happy Friday to you as well. Sister Aurelia said, last quote, I can design the solution myself. She said, Grand Rising on, is it Friday the 13th? Is that good or bad? I say we make it good. I say we all plan on manifesting something great, magnificent, and standing in the flow of wealth, health, and divine intervention today on this Friday the 13th. Happy Friday, Mom. I see you. Nubia Latifa's in the house. She says, good morning. Christine Denise Taylor says, ASA, happy Friday, family. Walaikum salam to you too, ma'am. Mom says, stay warm. Yeah, it's going to warm up. Grubby, still look classy. The MGT represents even in casual dress. You know that's right, girl. We know how to present. People keep away from auditors. I found out the hard way. Yeah, I know. Teach on the backside of your business. You learn the mistakes of business. Yes, yes, and yes. Who else we got here? We got Aya Solutions in the house. Says, Assalamu alaikum, great and amazing Friday, family, from Sister Monica. Walaikum salam, Sister Monica. Happy Friday. 13 is my new number. 4, Sister Aurelia, my actual favorite number. Okay, come on now. All right. Let's see. Any questions? Spiritual food, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. What is the duty of the civilized man and woman? That is actually right. We're going to have, inshallah, Culture and Civilization Night at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. I'm planning it, and I'm telling you, you've never seen nothing like this. Nothing like it. And what I love so much about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or one of the things I love so much, is his attention to excellence and everything being buttoned up and tightened up. And so you're going to see a level of elegance in the home, at the events. You're going to see access to an aspect of culture that at one time was commonplace in our community, but has, sort of been negotiated out of us. I'm not even going to give you all a hint, but let me just say it this way. What is the duty of the civilized man and woman? I'm going to leave it at that. You're going to see, I'm telling you, you're going to see a level of excellence like you've never seen before. People from all cultures are going to be blown away by the presentation, by the events, by some of the work that we are going to be doing right from the messenger's residence. And hopefully in the next couple of days, we are doing a partnership with Princeton Crossroads and University of Illinois and Dr. Leonard McGinnis and we're producing a series called The Messenger's Residence. And I can't wait for you all to see it. And we did spend some time all together at Georgia, just on the land, on the soil, um, tracing the footsteps of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I think you all will like that footsteps episode that we're putting together. But we've interviewed pioneers. We have an amazing um, session that we filmed with Minister Ishmael Muhammad. That's my big brother. I grew up in Islam with him, and he showed up and showed out for his little sis that day. Let me tell you, it brings tears to my eyes. But yeah, leadership. This is something that I would always say to my staff: give me the information, good or bad. As a creator, I can design a solution. So I don't like for my staff to withhold information. So a lot of times people become endeared to you and they see your struggle. Or if you are the kind of leader where you're like, I don't want to know anything bad, I don't want to know anything negative. And so sometimes they won't tell you if something happens. And my business style incorporates a military principle, or one of the military principles that I learned as a young vanguard and a young soldier in the Nation of Islam. And that is to report all slackness, weakness, and wrongdoing. You can put that in the chat. Report all slackness, weakness, and wrongdoing. And that was a rule with people working with me. I want to know it all. If my neck is in a noose, I want my hand on it. Because it might not be a big deal to you, but it may be a big deal to me. Or it may be something small to you, but it may be part of a puzzle piece that I'm putting together strategically. Okay. I may need to know that information because for me as an empath, I take all grains of information into consideration when I'm designing a strategy. So I want to know, I want to see what your work style looks like. I want to see what your ethics are like. I stay on the construction site and I'm there walking the site because if I can tell how clean you keep the site, I'm paying attention to how you work, how you present yourself. All of that tells me a lot about the quality of work that you're putting together. And I'm not paying for substandard work. Same thing with management style. If you are out there, if you're seeing patients, if you're seeing customers, and you're noticing certain things, report that to me. Report all slackness, weakness, and wrongdoing. I want to know. I want the information, good or bad. Because as a creator and as a creative leader, I have the ability to transform all that data into a solution that's going to get us to that next level. Okay, so that's an important trait of leadership. I want the information. Creativity and leadership go hand in hand. If you see somebody and they are a leader and they are not creative, that means they're really just a manager. They're either designing stuff that they can manage, they're either copying off of pulling information and things from somebody else. And I'm not saying that this is all bad, but you got to understand how to view a person's leadership style. And I'll tell you one last thing before we go. Now, I always say that, but I'm like my father, right? One last thing. Oftentimes in business, we will take a good employee and make them a bad manager. Or we'll take a good manager and make them a bad leader. Because in that transition process, through each of those steps, whether it's employee, member, staff member, organizational member, whatever on that base level, to get to that supervisory level is a certain skill set that oftentimes we don't equip people with. We just promote them because they're there, right? And then we make bad supervisors. And then we got a supervisor that we then want to make them a manager. And we make bad managers because they're not getting the training to transition. And then all of a sudden, we got these managers, these people who have gotten to that point. They may be a great manager. and then we bring them and put them on an executive team or on our board, and then they become bad leaders. Why? Because they don't really have the skills sometimes to move from that management position to that leadership position. It's two different things. And then some people can't toggle. What do I mean by that? Toggle, Toggle, because our businesses are not set up oftentimes the way that, in an ideal way, because there may be staffing issues or sometimes we just don't know. These people are toggling between being a manager and a leader. And so you still got them as a leader on your board, but they're in charge of operations. Well, you're going to create an inherent bias. You're going to corrupt your board because they're in charge of operations. So are they going to come to the table and properly and independently critique themselves? Probably not. It's not human nature. Here's the other side of it. You may have board members who don't have boots on the ground, never have had boots on the ground. They've never seen your project. If I'm building something and I have a management team, an executive team, I make them bring their butt to the site. I make them come out in the field. I want you on the retail floor for a day. I want you volunteering at the hospital for a day. Give me a day. Give me a couple hours. Because I want you to feel what you're making a decision about. I want you to look in the eyes of your coworkers, this team members. I want you to look in the eyes of the customers, the patients, so that you understand how your decision impacts what they do on a day-to-day basis, how it impacts how we deliver those goods and services to the community. That way, when you go back and sit at the board, you got a better idea. You understand. You got to come put boots on the ground. So this concept of the disconnect, we got to work on in our businesses, because again, we're mimicking a colonial white corporate structure that was designed with certain dependencies in place, certain predatory dependencies. That design is set up like that. It's set up because it won't work unless there are certain dependencies. And so a lot of times, we got, rules. If you're a nonprofit, if you're a for-profit, you may have rules depending on the state you're incorporated in on how you need to structure things, but you can certainly operate in a more conscious and non-predatory way. You may say, well, no, we're a nonprofit. We love everybody. We do all this stuff. We don't operate like that. Or you may say, no, my business gives back. We do so much for the community, but your structure is a colonialized, predatory-based structure. And so no matter how good you are, you're still creating the same interdependencies that caused our family members to have to escape from the South and come up north, caused the movements to start. So that's why when I'm coaching entrepreneurs, if you want to be a conscious entrepreneur, I'll teach you that old business models no longer work. And if you can find a way to tweak an existing business model that is common in whatever industry you're in, you're going to find yourself having an edge over other people who are literally just going to be robotic and follow that process. You can't just slap a black or brown face on an old colonized business mindset, business model, and say, okay, now it's a black business. Now it's a brown business. It doesn't work. And one other thing, I see y'all in the chat. I'm going to get to that. I see you. One other thing. I'm going to save it till tomorrow. Because if I get into that, it's going to be another conversation. But anyway, I wanted to to bring all those points up today. And I hope that I've helped open your mind when it comes to leadership, because oftentimes with leadership, we really just mimic what we've seen. And whatever you've seen around you, maybe where you worked at, maybe what you heard about, in your family growing up. How do we become these conscious leaders and these conscious entrepreneurs where we're creating generational wealth? Generational wealth is not just money. It's legacy, it's memories, it's a way of life and a way of being. And for me, what's really important for a lot of our house museums and the history and the work that we're doing is that we really have to relay the mindset and the way of life, not just to other people that look like them, but to white people that support us as well. How did they learn how to do this? What is the mental process? How did they get up here to the North and create wealth and make a dent in society? What was the process? What were some of the leadership principles? To me, this is the very important thing, because those that empathize with us and want to help us, that maybe may not look like us, but get our story and respect our story and say, hey, I want to help. I want to be a part of it. We should be teaching that. We should be teaching that way of life. How did they roll? Even maybe some of the mistakes that they made. Let's talk about it, because history is the greatest discipline at rewarding the student. It'll help you learn how to recognize patterns. Because remember, made men and women cannot create. They don't create. All they do is, once a pattern is developed, they just keep repeating it over and over and over again. Believe it or not, you got the same stuff going on right now in 2024 that was going on in the 60s. We just oftentimes can't see it because we don't know our history. Anyway, all right. Thank you all. Thank you, family. I appreciate you all being here. Let's see what we got. Correction. She says, oh, civilized. Okay. Spiritual food and wisdom. What is the duty of the civilized man and woman? Okay. Correction. Okay. Jealousy, weakness. Yeah. You got to report all of that. Yeah. A lot of that goes hand in hand. An ingrained spirit, crabs in the barrel mentality. Unlike your position to share in this space without assessing a rate. Yeah, we got to break that mold. We have to break that mold. We have to stop being so stingy. We have to stop being so competitive. We have to stop operating our life based on the manner in which the colonizer socialized us. There's a socialization that happens on slave plantations. Oh, she's lighter than me, so she gets to go in the big house and get a piece of chicken. She's dark skinned. She ain't that cute. She got to work in the field. And so there's competition. There's all of this. Go back and read the Willie Lynch letter. A lot of people don't realize how much that really truly became the operational manual or the HR manual for managing the slaves. And as an HR manager, it has just morphed and it looks more sophisticated, but it's still there. And then there were business models created that supported that. There was a way of being, a way of doing business. There was a way of conducting themselves. And then people even designed their personalities, if you will, around that whole Willie Lynch process. See, when you meet a coon is operating right smack dab up in the heart of Willie Lynch. When you meet a conscious and spiritual entrepreneur, they're not practicing none of that. There's no light against dark. There's no you against me. It's me against me. It's me trying to figure out how to line up with what I showed up on the planet to do. And I understand that in order for me to get there, it's important, just like in order for them to get from the south to the north, somebody had to help along the way. Somebody gave you a little piece of bread. Somebody told you what direction to go in. You know, you walking, you just got there. Where do I go? Somebody told you something. You landed here in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. Somebody took you in. You stayed somewhere. You had some help. You had some support. See, I said one last thing. I'm going to say it again. During the Reconstruction era, after the abolition of slavery, we own more land. We own more businesses. Why? Because we were united. The terrorism around us united us and made us stick together. We just didn't have a way to defend ourselves. And so as a result, you had 132 different Black cities that were destroyed by terrorism. Again, how do we make sure that those things don't happen again? And this is not a black and white conversation. This is a conversation about people who are conscious and want to live a certain lifestyle and want to be a certain type of way. So there's going to be many people who don't look like you, white people, different cultures that are going to come to help you. And like I started this conversation off talking about Muddy Waters and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, there were white people that helped them. Elijah Muhammad had white lawyers. There were many, many white people that came to the table and had conversations. That $80 million empire was not built just by interacting with Black people alone. It's built based on principle, a principle of respect, a principle of intelligence and integrity. And believe it or not, they had their story, and it doesn't mean that you discount their story because you don't like the fact that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad came up out of the South and as a young boy saw a lynching on his way home from school. He only went to the 3rd grade, so he had to be less than 3rd grade age. Saw a lynching of a 10 or 11-year-old boy that he knew, saw the boy hanging. He had just missed it. And you wonder why you can't talk him off of the edge when he's talking about his love for Black people, when he's pointing out to us the injustices, when he broke down to us what a devil is. You got to understand the story. You got to understand the truth behind it, and you got to understand the story as to why they felt like that. They were massive victims of terrorism. We talking after slavery. Some people say, "Well, stop talking about slavery." Okay, let's set slavery to the side a little bit. What was happening in their neighborhoods, in their communities? Crosses being burned, people being lynched, thousands and thousands of people being lynched. We're so desensitized to it that it's incredible. I was just watching something last night on the news. I had to turn it off, but it's somewhere here in Illinois. It was either Bolingbrook or Aurora, where they killed a brother in the back of a cop car, and the dash cam caught them. The brother was unconscious, and they just cut off his breathing supply right there on the camera. This kind of thing was happening in their faces all the time. And there was no social media. Malcolm X talks about his father being killed, tied to the railroad track. This is terrorism. And so when you sit down and you judge these people, you got to look at and incorporate their story and where they came from. That's an important trait of a leader. Who is this person I'm working with? What is their story? And how does their story and their background impact how they lead other people? And so based on the type of leader that I need, I want to know your story. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know how you roll. Because if you're a jealous-hearted, competitive person, I can't have you as a leader in my organization. But if I understand Maybe your parents migrated here from Mexico and you've been taught to be excellent all your life because your parents sacrificed so much for you to be here. I want to know that because that's going to tell me a lot about how you may or may not manage. All right, family. Love you all very much. We are going to, let's see, we got, what's tomorrow? Today is Friday, right? We got one more day. Today is part 4. So we got part 5 coming up tomorrow of our business warfare series. Use the QR code, family. Shop at our virtual gift shop. We're constantly adding more stuff. Did y'all get y'all oud oils yet? And make sure you join the mailing list because I'm going to be communicating with you all about Black History Month and the schedule for the tours, Black History Month, Savior's Day, what's going to be happening. Stay close. All right. Join that mailing list and make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so that you can stay up to date on everything that's going on. I have not gotten to the point where I put out an actual written newsletter, but this is my newsletter. Come on over here and learn business warfare and some of these other topics and catch up on past episodes. All right. So look, it's Friday the 13th. Y'all about to get paid. Give a love offering, Cash App, Sajdah Enterprises. Keep the flow going. I fed you, given you some information, gave you some good breakfast food this morning, a little good nourishment to get your day started. Then give it back. Go to Cash App, Sajdah Enterprises, or hit the super chat button down there in the corner and support the network. All right. We'll see you all tomorrow morning, inshallah. And make it a beautiful day. Do something nice for somebody today. Say something nice to somebody. Love on somebody today. Make somebody's day. Peace and blessings, family. Love you.